One of my favorite parts about classic Thomas stories is the fact they all feel rooted in some kind of reality, and that's because most of them were. The Reverend W. Awdry would take infinite inspiration from actual railways, and the events that would take place on them, so it's only natural these would be translated in some way in the Sodor stories. Well, on the chance you're a classic series fan like me, I'd be willing to bet you remember the episode where James needed bootlaces to save his train. In itself, it's a pretty solid episode, and is very defining for James as a character. But just like many other Season 1 or Railway series stories, this is somewhat true and actually happened. It's also been a very long while since we've done a True Stories of episode, so with all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this one. Now, in the story, what causes James to even need the bootlaces is him being rough with the coaches. This in turn causes a leak in the brakes, leaving James and the entire consist, no pun intended, dead in their tracks. Eventually, and with some persuasion, a smartly dressed man from the train gives up his bootlaces to save the consist. And this as an idea seems like a pretty common one. Imagine a crew backing an engine too hard into some coaches, or maybe even just general rough riding. Naturally, that might cause some damage. But someone giving up a leather bootlace to have to save a train? I mean, that sounds a little crazy, right? Well, not as crazy as you might think. It turns out Jeremiah Jobling and this entire situation are very much real, at least to a degree. And for this today, we have two sources. The first coming from Railway Gazette, on November 14th of 1947, with the clipping title being very fittingly Train Run on a Shoestring. Now in this we learn a 8 AM train from Clacton to London would stop on a lonely section of the Elleney Yard near Essex. For about 10 minutes passengers had no clue why. That is until the guard would enter the first-class carriage asking for a leather bootlace. Not for himself, for the driver, and he had apparently been all along the train looking for such. It just so happened a passenger was wearing a pair. That coincidentally were kinda rare, most shoestrings are made of cotton, but thankfully he would still give one over. And using that and a wad of newspapers, the driver would mend a vacuum pipe which had completely burst, coincidentally jamming the brakes. And with that mended, the train would then go on. Now, this is straight up the original story of James and the Coaches. And coming from 1947, it's very likely this is something that could have inspired Awdry. But like I said, it just so happens we have two sources. It's just the last one definitely did not inspire this story. In fact, it's a lot more recent and could be seen as one of those life imitates art situations, with this source coming from the BBC on June 28th of 2005. As you can tell from the title, this time the driver didn't ask for bootlaces but tape. And basically what happened in this situation is a MML train from London to Nottingham would ground to a halt south of Leicester. One of the locomotive's exterior pipes would come loose, and the driver would then ask the passengers if anyone had some tape. A spokeswoman would say it was a serious request, but not one that was critical of safety. What's kinda sad, or maybe even funny however, is there was apparently no response from the passengers. Instead, a fitter came and fixed the locomotive. Now, it's easy to say if it were me in this situation, of course I would have given them tape or blah blah blah. But giving these passengers some credit, if I were them, the first thought I would have is, y'all don't have electrical tape up there? So I can kinda understand. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are the true stories of James and the Coaches. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for even more train content. And if there's any other episodes you guys would like me to check out, be sure to comment down below. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons for making videos like this possible. And with all of that being said, thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.
Either subscribe, donate, or get the fuck out.